Hello everyone. In this video we will be blocking out our trunk and getting it ready to take into Zbrush. So the first thing that I like to do is I always create a biped for scale reference. And as I explained before, I'm in 3ds Max. The way that I'm going to approach this is kind of specific to 3ds Max, so there are ways to do this in Maya, but just a little differently, you know. But the first thing is I'm going to go over here to my Create tab, and I'm going to go to, where is he at? Where is it at? Biped. Sorry about that. Let's expand this a little bit. So I'm just going to click and drag right there, and here I can enter his height. I believe the average height is 175 centimeters. So I have my units in feet right now because, you know, I come from architecture, and over here in the US, we are still using feet and inches. But for this particular scene, I'm actually going to be using meters. So I'm not sure why this is in feet. It might be my display units, but it's not that big of a deal. Let's just say he's 5'8". Okay, cool. So now that we have our human figure here in scale, I'm gonna move him over just a tad. I am going to create a box that will represent our total height for this tree. And after looking at our reference, which I have on my second monitor over here, it says that the height ranges from 15 feet tall to 6 inches. I'm gonna make this one pretty close to a mature version of this tree, so let's just say 15 feet. So I'm gonna create my box here. It's just a reference box. I'm gonna press F4 to display wireframe on shaded, and then I'm gonna type in 15 feet in the height. Cool. Okay, so that's about how tall this guy's gonna be in the end here. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to go into front view here, and then I'm going to go over here to shapes in my create tab, and then I'm gonna pick a line. So I'm gonna draw several points here, and that's because we can actually manipulate this spline with the stack modifiers on top of it. And it's a really cool non-destructive way of getting the shape how we like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start out with let's say like 4. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm clicking as I'm doing this. 4, and then I'm going to right click to stop it. Cool. Right now you can see that it's rendering as a pipe, and that's just because I've told 3ds Max, hey, enable this particular radial rendering mode in my viewport. If I just uncheck that, I can turn it back into a line. And with that, I can also go in here and start messing with my selection that I made. So as I said, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just gonna, for now, just kind of evenly distribute these vertices just by selecting them and dragging them up. And then what I would like to do is I'm gonna start to move these. And you know what? I just realized that I made a mistake and I didn't draw this line to have smooth smooth transitions. As you can see, it's very jagged and pointy. I think that's okay. Actually, you know what? Let's I'm looking at the reference as I'm deciding this. Let's do this again. Let's delete this. Let's do another one. Let's go line again. And then let's go down here, sorry. Scroll down. The reason why it was very jagged was because we had our initial type as smooth and our drag type as Bezier. So I'm going to make that smooth and smooth. And then I'm going to do the same thing, click, and I'm holding shift to lock it in orthogonal mode. So 1, 2, 3. Cool. Now what we can do is we can go back to our selection. Let's do the same thing, just kind of get it evenly distributed here. Boom, boom. And now we can start dragging these points, and it'll do a nice kind of smooth transition for us, you know, like instead of that hard jagginess we had before. So one thing that I really like about this tree is that there's kind of there's these parts in it where, you know, they grow in clusters, and not all of them grow, you know, straight up as trees usually do. So I'm just gonna just kind of drag this over. Let's say and that's my daughter in the background. She's having a good old time. Let's do something like this. I don't know. And I'm just kind of getting the direction of the trunk. Yeah, let's try that. Okay. So now that we're happy with our shape, I'm gonna deselect here. Let's go to enable in viewport. So at the beginning, we had this checked, and that was rendering in a radial mode. Alternatively, if I clicked rectangular, you can see that it would become a rectangle, but we don't want that. We want something like that. And the one thing you can do here, you can actually increase the number of sides, you know, edges, or you can decrease. And I think what I'm going to do, since this is just a block out, I think I'm just gonna stick with 8. I think that's plenty. Because remember, eventually we're going to be moving this guy into Zbrush, and that's going to be where we have all that smoothing action going on. So we don't need to worry about this too much, just as long as it retains a spherical shape. Cylindrical, sorry, not spherical. So, okay, next thing is our thickness. You know what? Let's go to display. I'm gonna go to customize, and I'm going to go to unit setup. So the reason why we have these displaying in feet and inches is because I have it checked here. Let's just change that. Let's say it's in meters. Sure. Okay, and now what you can do here is under our thickness menu, let's just bump this up. Let's bump that up a little bit. And I don't know, it looks like these trunks range in thicknesses, so I'm just gonna eyeball it. Because I have my handy dandy human figure here, I'm just going to use him as reference, and that's why I have him in the scene, right? So let's say something like this. Yeah, that's fine right there. Sure. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Next thing. I'm using 3ds Max 2019. I've noticed in 2018 actually doesn't have this feature, so I'm not going to use it, but I thought I would show you it. It's called quad cap, And essentially what it does is on a spline, you can click that there and it nicely caps it for you. And you can also bump up the segments so you get a nice rounded, smooth edge. I'm going to assume that not everyone has this, so I'm going to try my best to not use that. Yeah, which kind of gives me a little bit of an issue, but that's okay. We can work with it. But I just wanted to show you that. The reason why this is so cool, and it's honestly kind of important. I'm surprised that Autodesk introduced this in 2019. But when you divide and smooth in ZBrush, they need things called reference edges, and while it's smoothing, it will take the average from this edge to this edge and smooth it to that average. And if you don't have an end cap like this, it will completely destroy itself. Now, an easy way to fix it would just be to add a couple edges here. So that's probably what we're gonna do. It's not a huge deal, but I just wanted you guys to know that that's usually how I do it. So anyways, with that, I am going to now. Okay, so we're happy with our shape of our trunk here. There is one more thing though that we need to do, and that is, as you guys know, we need to project out this bottom part of the trunk, because that's how they look, and that's why they're called elephant's foot. Okay. Let's go to. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into our stack modifiers, and we're going to go down to our old edit poly. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to modify this based off of a soft selection. So in our edit poly modifier, I'm going to go to vertex mode. And I'm going to go back to front just for a second. And I'm going to select these bottom vertices. Okay. And now that I have those selected, what I can do is I can come down here to this tab called soft selection. And I can say, yes, use soft selection. And what it does is it takes into account what you have selected, and then it averages out based off of a numerical value that you type in. For example, when I go over here to this fall off tab, I can increase this value. And so now what it's doing, you can see, is it's running up our spline. So pretty much the way I'm going to approach this is I only want to affect areas that are going to be our trunk, right? Because that's all we want to push out. So let's stop our soft selection. I don't know, somewhere. Let's say somewhere like here. Sure. And the important thing also to remember while you guys are doing this is that, this is a block out. This is not in any way final whatsoever. So it's okay, you don't have to be precise, super duper precise, but it helps, obviously. Anyways, let's move on. I have my soft selection now. So with that soft selection, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another modifier on top. And this is called the push modifier. And now what push does is it pretty much extrudes out our selection, right? And you can see what it's doing here. As I'm increasing the value, all it's doing is it's pushing out those selections. So now that I see this, I think that this might work. We're going to need to adjust it a little bit, but that's okay. What I can do now is I can go back and select my edit poly, and if you want to edit this, you can either increase or decrease. So that's pretty cool. So let's say this is a fairly mature tree here. And That looks fine. Yeah, that looks fine. I think what we're going to end up doing is we're going to flatten this out so that we don't have this, crazy diagonal thing here, because I can just see that giving us problems in ZBrush. But first, I want to make sure that this looks good. And the other thing that we might want to do too is we might want to thin out the top. Basically the same thing we did here, just the inverse up here, and kind of like meet it in the middle. So let's do that. Let's go back into our push modifier, and let's add another modifier on top of that. So let's add another push modifier. Sorry, is right here. Okay, cool. Let's select our top. Hold on, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna delete this. What I'm going to do now is add an edit poly, because I forgot that we need to select these vertices as a soft selection. So now we gotta do an edit poly. I'm gonna go back into my vertices and I'm gonna select my top. Right there. Okay, same thing we did down here. I'm gonna add a push modifier. And it's P. Alphabet is hard. Okay. And I forgot again. We need to actually activate the soft selection. Sorry, guys. Let's go down here. Let's activate the soft selection. Let's pull this down to maybe there. Let's see what that does. Like somewhere right there. And then let's go back into our push, and let's take this down a little bit. So yeah, nice. So now we're getting that shape. It's not on my screen, but I'm sure after you guys are, after you guys make your boards, you can see what I'm talking about. This elephant type foot that is swelled with water, and then it nicely thins up to the top of our tree. So now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another edit poly, and I'm going to clean this up down here. And I think we're going to also add those support loops that I was talking about earlier. So let's go to edit poly. In this edit poly mode, I can just go into my face selection by pressing 4. Select those faces and just delete them. I don't really need them. Now I'm going to go into my front view here, and I'm just going to see if I can maybe like finesse this to flatten it out a little bit. And what I can do here is I can scroll down in my edit poly modifier, and there should be a thing called option called make planar. So I'm going to do that, and I can already tell that this isn't going to work, but I want to show you guys why it's not going to work. So if I wanted to make it planar in the, sorry, not the Z, in the Y, you can see that, well, maybe it could work. It could work. The reason why I was saying it wasn't going to work was because, if you pull this down to our original bottom, we lose that resolution. We lose that edge definition here. But I think it might be okay. And I say that because what we can do is I'm going to go up here and go to my hierarchy tab. I'm going to affect this pivot. I'm going to turn on my snap toggle. I'm also going to enable axis constraints in snap toggle, and I'm going to enable it in the X. And the way I always have this activated. I think if you guys are using 3ds Max for the first time, you might not have this option here, and the way you get to it is you right click, and there should be an option here called axis constraints. You activate that, drag that into your toolbar here, and you should be good. If not, Autodesk, sorry, the internet is your best friend. just type in enable axis constraints 3ds Max. I've done it a million times, I know, because I'm always moving my projects around. So anyways, what I did there, let me back up, sorry. I affected my pivot, I pulled it down strictly in the Y direction, and I snapped it directly to this axis here. So now I'm going to turn off affect pivot. I'm going to pull this down and I'm going to snap it. Right now I have edge snapping turned on. So I'm going to right click on my snap and I'm going to enable edge point. I'm going to turn off edge. I'm going to pull that down like that. Cool. But now we have this this height to make up here. That's okay. We could probably just leave it, honestly, because I'm just thinking ahead. Our cards are going to be kind of going out and doing a thing like that. So we can probably just leave it. If you don't want to, I'll show you how. It's really easy to move it back. Just go into your vertex selection, make sure you clear this selection, and then just bring this back up. I'm going to turn off snap. Just kind of like, drag it up towards there. And finally, we're going to add those support loops that I was talking about. So I'm going to connect this. I'm going to try and get like the same amount of resolution here. So maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4 is probably fine. I'm also going to add one more at the very, bring that down. I'm going to slide this way to here. Cool. I'm pressing P to go into perspective mode. And now, I know there's a really easy command to do this in Maya, and I think it's called poke face. But I'm going to select these verts, and then I'm just going to connect them. And then I'm going to cut across like that, if it'll let me. Why are you not working? Sometimes Max does these things, and I don't understand why. Maybe I start in the middle? Why is it not working? What's going on? Okay, you know what? Let's do this. Let's, I pressed 4 to go into my face selection. I'm going to select these faces here, and I'm just going to delete them. Then I'm going to press 3 to go into border mode. I'm going to cap it again, which goes back to our beginnings, and then I'm going to go back into face and then inset. Hey, baby girl. I'm gonna inset. Sorry, guys. My daughter came over here to say hi. She thinks she can talk already. She's only like 6 months old. I'm gonna inset that face a certain amount. Doesn't need to be all the way. Just make sure that you're not overlapping like that, or else you get these crazy Z fighting edges faces. Sorry. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go into vertices by pressing 1. Let's select all of these here, and then let's weld them. So I'm pressing weld here, and then bringing up the settings. I'm just gonna bump this up. Boom. Now we have a nice poked face, as the Maya users say. So what I'm also going to do for good measure is I'm going to go back into edge mode. I'm going to select all of these edges. And then I'm going to do a connect. And I think I'm going to do the same amount of distance as I had over here. And I might even increase the segments. Because if you guys are familiar with Zbrush, when we apply that divide smoothing to it, it's going to divide the distances, the smoothing distance. So I just want to make sure that we have enough supporting edges for that. Let's even do 3. Why not? I'm going to actually change that back to 0 for my slide so it's nice and even. Actually, I take it back. I'm going to Control Z. I think that's fine. Okay. Very nice. And with that, we have a nice, really simple block out for our tree. Now, one thing that, as I'm sure you guys have noticed, is the clusters. I keep mentioning the clusters. So I actually want more. I want more trees coming out from this base, and that's going to make for a really cool silhouette. And now that I'm looking at this, I think I forgot something. And I'm sorry if I go radio silent sometimes, but that's just because I'm thinking, and I want you guys to be able to see an artist struggle for a little bit, because I think that's good. So what I'm thinking is, we moved the tree trunk in this axis in the front view, but you'll notice if I press L and I go to the left view and I turn my default shading on, F4. I'm gonna hide my reference blocks for a second. You'll see that we didn't manipulate this in the left view, in the other side. So that's something that I think we need to do. I mean, trees, they grow this way and they grow this way, right? So I think what I'm going to do is, in our edit poly, instead of, what we should do is we should go back down to the line, the very end of the line here. In fact, let's just try that. So you can see when I turn off these modifiers, it's a step back from what we've been doing. So let's just see. So a modifier exists in the stack that depends on topology. Changing parameters may have undesirable effects. That's okay. Yeah, I want to continue. Let's try this. And I don't know if this will be worth it or not, and if it's not, we'll just Control Z a little bit. So now it's going, let's see there. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this back on. And yes, so this is what happened. So that warning that we got earlier was basically saying, hey, I'm going to forget some things. It'll remember our properties here, but it will not remember our selections. So you know what? Let's just Control Z. Let's go back to, oh, you know what? Okay, yeah. Let's go back to what we had. Let's hide this for a second. So one way that we can fix this is, in our edit poly, let's just do another soft selection, just like I showed you guys before. Let's soft select, and then let's increase that fall off downward. Let's see, about there, and then let's just move it a little bit. Cool. And then we can even decrease a little bit more. Let's see right there, and then we can just straight up turn it off, and then straighten it out there. Now our tree is going both this direction and that direction, so that's a little more interesting. And when we start, duplicating these together, it's going to make for a more interesting silhouette and just an overall better looking asset. So let's do the same thing. All of these tree trunks that I'm looking at, they all grow from the base. And I can even see when there's multiple trunks, the base of the tree actually becomes more elongated, depending. So I think what I'm going to do is, since we've already done, all this work here, let's just duplicate it. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel. We already did all this work. So let's do this. Let's hold shift, and then let's duplicate this in the X direction. And when I let go, it's going to say, do you want to copy it, instance it, or create a reference? I want to create a copy because I want to affect this independently. So I'm going to press OK. So now we got 2 here. Okay. That's good. This is good. So now let's say that this, I'm going to press G to turn the grid off, by the way. Let's say that this particular trunk what he does is he does this. Let's increase our soft selection. Let's say he goes this way. He goes the other way. He's basically saying, hey man, I'm just as good as you are, you tree. But I'm a little jealous because I'm a little bit shorter than you are. Oh, what do you mean, Craig? Oh, it's shorter? Okay. Well, yeah. It's probably not going to be all the same height. You know, again, I'm looking back to the reference. Some of them are the same height, but again, I'm thinking about silhouette. I'm thinking about what's going to make for the most interesting asset. And if I made all these trunks the same height, that wouldn't be very interesting now, would it? So let's make him shorter. And the way I'm going to do that is, I think what I'm going to do is, I'm going to double click and select this edge ring. And then I'm going to press ring. And what that does is it selects every single edge ring upward. And then I'm going to deselect every other one until I get to the base. So and now I'm going to press, I did this backwards, I'm sorry. What I want to do is I want to, okay, yeah, let's deselect these as well. There we go. And the top. You do not want to delete the top because we put a lot of, well, we put some effort in there. So I'm going to press Control and then Backspace to delete those. And then I'm going to use my soft selection again, and maybe this will work. I'm just kind of trying things out right now. Because essentially what I want to do is this. I want to pull it down. And the reason why I deleted those edges was because I knew that I would end up with relatively even edge loops across. If I didn't, then this guy, because he's shorter, would have more than this one, and we kind of want to be consistent. So I think this is good. This is good for now. Let's turn off our soft selection, and I kind of want to fix this. I went into vert mode there, and then let's just rotate him. Let's maybe rotate him, I don't know, how about like that? Cool. And then, like I said before, the bases of these trees, they all grow out of the same base. So I don't like that kink. One thing that I find myself doing that I need to stop doing is getting caught up in the little details when we're blocking things out. We can fix all this stuff. I'm just talking about this little kink right here that I have. We can fix all this in ZBrush. It's not a big deal. So as much as you can, don't sweat the small stuff. We're trying to create an interesting shape for our tree here. And what I'm doing is I'm going into like each view. I'm rotating around. See, like I like this view. I'm not so crazy about this view, but I'm comparing it to my reference and it seems like that's what they do. But maybe what I want to do just to give a little more variation is I want to push this a little bit further to the left. So let's pull this maybe a little bit more over like that. And yeah, so I end up with something like that. What I'm going to do with this is, I think I'm going to, first of all, turn off soft selection. I'm going to select these faces just on this side, and this is going to be really messy and bad, but that's okay because I'm thinking ahead. I'm thinking we're going to end up dynameshing in ZBrush, so it won't really matter. But I'm just gonna like push this over a little bit. I'm just trying to get rid of this little extreme valley that it has. Before it was, like that, but I think that's a little bit better. And I might do the same thing to this one as well. So I'm just trying to create like a little bit of a softer transition. Let's push that over. And again, these are intersecting. That's okay. Because in ZBrush, we're going to do a Dynamesh. And I think it will chop this out. And if it doesn't, that could be bad. I'll have to double check on that. But let's just roll with the punches right now and say that, again, this is a blockout. Dynamesh should be our friend for this. Man, I'm thinking it's not going to, though. That's okay. Let's, again, don't sweat the small stuff for now. We can fix that later. And then let's get one more in here. So I'm gonna hold Shift again. I'm gonna press OK. Let's rotate this. Rotate this way. Cool. And kind of push that inward. And then, like before, you know what, I'm going to try and even these out a little bit. So I press 2 to go into edge mode. I'm going to double click to select that edge ring. And then I'm going to hit this edge constraint. And what that does is it only allows me to move this along the existing edges that this loop is connected to. So I'm just doing this as kind of like a temporary, just to get more of an even edge flow here. And then I will do the same thing. I'll go back into my soft selection, enable it there. It remembered our selection from this one because 3ds Max is pretty cool sometimes. And you'll see right now that it's not doing what we want it to do, and that's because we still have edge constraints enabled, which is, where'd it go? Yeah, down here. So I'm going to click that back to none. And now, there we go. So this guy, let's say he's a shorter guy, and he kind of does this, right? Something like that. It's kind of cool. And I'm envisioning right now my canopies and how we're going to lay that out as well. I'm thinking that this will probably become the largest canopy, and it might, oh, maybe not that big. I don't know. I'm just messing around right now, just to see what I want to do eventually, because I don't want this to be, I don't want these the spaces in between these canopies to be too much. So I just wanted to see how big do I need to make them from there. And got some nice little lollipops now. And okay, yeah, I think that can work. If you're doing this for a game, which I am, you also want to think about the expensiveness of textures, and obviously we're going to have opacity maps for these canopy leaves, and that's why I'm trying to be somewhat conservative, because opacity masks and alphas are quite expensive to render, and when you start overlapping them like how we're going to do later in this tutorial, you create more draw calls for this asset, and we don't want to do that, but we also want to create good art too. I don't want this game to look gross. That's the worst when you're playing a game and you're like, oh man, this is really bad. Anyways, rambling a bit. So cool. Let's say, this is our front view. I don't really like that. let's go to our, I do like this. I like this left view, but let's fix this front view. So, and you guys don't obviously need to do it exactly this way, but this is just how I'm doing it. And hopefully that's okay with you guys. If not, that makes me sad. But that's okay. Yeah, so I'm just gonna drag that over so that I like this facade, this view, as well as this view. I think that's pretty cool. I might pull this one over a little bit. And I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole a little bit here, and I think that I should start to button this one up. So we now have a they look like the tentacles that come out of the water in Wind Waker. Anyways, we now have a kind of interesting little tentacle tree going on here, and I figured that that's what it would look like at this point in the process. But anyways, hopefully this was useful. If not, I apologize. Uh, I'm just thinking ahead, and I think this is going to work for us, at least for now. And if it doesn't, we can always come back in here and alter it, right? So, anyways, I think, oh, I guess I should show you guys the export process that I do. Really straightforward. What I'd like to do is, I'm just going to duplicate this over here. And I'm going to say that this is my original asset with all my stack modifiers before because I need to attach these together. So this is going to be the one that we're exporting. So I'm going to select these three here. I'm going to right click and convert that to Editable Poly. And what that does is you can see it gets rid of our modifiers, and that's why I duplicated this one over here just in case we still want to work with it. Trying to be as non-destructive as possible. So now I'm going to select this middle one just because it's already centered with its pivot, and then I'm going to scroll down and hit attach. I'm going to attach that and attach that. And now I'm also going to zero this out. I'm going to go to File, Export, Selected. And then I'm going to choose my location. So choose your location wherever you're going to put it. Okay, this is officially a production asset now, so I'm going to create a folder for it. So this is called the Ponytail Palm. And then I will call we're going to export this as an OBJ. I like to organize my files by file type. Let's call this 01 underscore ponytail palm base, because it is not our final one. It's a base for us to start. So I'm gonna scroll down here and select OBJ. Hit save. I don't need materials, and I don't need you to create a material library for me. I don't even have texture coordinates, but it doesn't really matter. I think this is fine. There's a preset down here for Zbrush. If we were working with materials, like you can also include that, but we don't really care about that right now. All we care about is geometry information. So I'm just going to press export. And it says, oh, cool, it was 448 quads total, 24 triangles. Cool, that's good for a block out. Okay, and with that, you guys, we're going to jump into ZBrush in the next video, and we're really going to tear this thing apart and start sculpting on top of it. And it's going to get messy. I am in no way an expert ZBrush guy, but I know a couple of tricks that should be able to help us. help us along with this. So I will see you all in the next video.